Today's course is actually Intro to 3D in Photoshop, and we have Paul Tranny here standing next to me. How you doing, man?
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm doing great, man.
It's good to have you here. I'm glad you're here.
I'm excited about all of this. I have a lot to show, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know what you have set up, but I want to kind of...
Yeah, let's show off this MakerBot thing we got here, but you showcase Adobe's leading technology all over the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and I was just in Atlanta yesterday, and I'm happy to be here in Seattle. So...
Man. All over, literally all over the world. So what do we have here? Show us what you got going on.
Yeah, so what we have going on right here, this is just a 3D printer. It happens to be a MakerBot, all right? Yeah. And based on something I made actually in Photoshop, it's actually, actually printing it out right now. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, so we'll actually make this. It's doing this iPhone case. Again, we're keeping it simple, but we'll be checking in on this like periodically.
Throughout the day.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun.
Awesome, well let's head into the studio and get going.
Let's do it.
All right.
Alrighty. So, yes. Hello, everyone.
How we doing?
Let's get this party started, huh? This is fun. I'm glad you guys are here. We are going to be talking about 3D in Photoshop. Okay, so the fundamentals of 3D as well as 3D printing. Because let's face it, there's a lot of hype around 3D printing, which is super cool. But in general, I'm going to talk about 3D, the benefits of it as well. Okay, so we do have 3D in Photoshop, and the short of it is like with 3D in Photoshop, we can like handle, say, changes easily. The example I like to have is, or tell you about is, typically, say for instance, if you have a photo shoot, you have to go to a location, you do the photo shoot, let's say it's for a car. You do that photo shoot, and then the director or whoever wants changes to it. It could easily mean a different shoot that you have to schedule for another day. In the case of even vehicles, like a lot of times, they will create the advertisements for it based on the 3D models long before even the vehicle's even made. So they actually use those 3D models and composite that into a scene for an ad rather than doing the photo shoot, right? It's going to give you a lot of that flexibility. But even for some very basic things that I'm going to show you, I'll show you what you can use 3D for. But again, it's to handle any of those changes, people change their minds, and that creative freedom. Short of it is 3D printing in Photoshop is what I'm going to dive into next, right? Now, 3D printing in general has been around a while. That's actually me. I'm this guy with like his pants almost pulled up to his armpits. That's me, okay? But again, this is when 3D printing was actually created back then. So, and then there was this, it's been used in manufacturing, it's been used in medical, and basically in industrial, all right? And there's been patents on it. But those patents have expired, say around 2010. That's when you started to see all this stuff kind of come around. So MakerBot and all these different companies have started developing these printers, and so you have all this competition now, and you see a lot of this technology advancing even more rapidly. But that's kind of where all the hype comes from, right? But it's been around for like 30 years. And I'll show you that stuff in a second. Before I dive too much in this, I do want to just kind of dive into Photoshop really fast. And we'll get into 3D printing, but I just want to go back to my example of, say, for instance, the car example. All right? So again, this is just 3D in Photoshop. A couple things I can do here, and again, I can schedule a shoot. Luckily, go to Prague if you're so lucky. Do that photo shoot. Hopefully, nobody's there and the roads are nice and shiny. But in general, we don't have that luxury. What I want to do from here, again, in that same case of luckily having that model, okay, already created, right? Because that's what the engineers used. I can load that right into Photoshop, right? You guys might be wondering, well, where did you get that? Because that's a little bit cheating, right? Well, look, get more content directly from Photoshop. You can get more content, okay? So in general, new 3D layer from that file. Let's go ahead and open it, and I can bring it in, and here's basically my model right here, okay? So this is just a 3D file. If you guys are curious as to the file types, they're all right down here, but pretty much they're the general file types that you have for 3D. Okay, so you have your, what's your main one is like Collada files, DAE, 3D Studio Max, roughly. and even 3D printing type files. STL is what you see right down there. That's for 3D printing. But get 3D content, download it, load it in just like I did, and you'll have your vehicle right here. And all I'm doing is using the move tool, so I can come in here and say kind of like reposition it this way. Let's move it down. Maybe make it a little larger. And then move it down, kind of down here, and position this the way I want it. In fact, I will turn on, this is the grid, just so I can see that vanishing point. I can line up that vanishing point with this scene. So again, just getting this the way I want it, shrinking it down a little bit more as we get a little particular, just like that. Okay. Okay, so lighting, this is the next thing I'm looking at. Let me show you this, guys. Check this out. This layer right over here has that little 3D box, says that it's a 3D layer. Okay, this is great. Okay, so now what I can do is I can open up the 3D panel. Okay, so this is your best friend when it comes to 3D. This is your new layers panel, guys. Okay, so you're used to using your layers panel over here. Check out this 3D panel is pretty much your layers panel. You will have your current view, you'll have your light source. I select that layer and then I'm going to be able to manipulate the light source. I select the model that I've imported, I can manipulate that model, move it around, whatever I want to do. In this case, I want to select that infinite light, right? So here it is, here's the light and I can adjust it. And I can have that light, it's kind of coming from, I mean, it's like sunset, it's dusk easily, but I can kind of put it kind of back there, kind of wherever the light source is in the photo, that's where I'm creating or moving that light, okay? All right, so I'll keep it simple just like that. That looks pretty good. Let's do more with it, guys. It certainly looks like a plastic toy, right? So let's have it like reflect the environment, right? That's what I want to do next. So I'm literally going to select environment, and then right over here off to the side, I have this image-based light, okay? But in general, just load up a new texture. Actually, let's actually load a texture. But basically, I'm selecting that same image that's the background. I'm saying, hey, the image I want to reflect is going to be that background. And all the reflective surfaces in there is going to get reflected. So I'm going to select OK. There it is. You don't see it that much, but I will crank this up here in a second. It actually is there. Let me take a look at this. So there's the reflection. As I just crank up the reflection, it's actually reflecting. Look, if you guys notice right down here, I don't know if I can zoom in like this, how that's working out. But in general, you can see it's reflecting everything around it. I didn't have to paint this in. There was no guesswork, right? It's just done, right? And I can still adjust the lighting, but that's a big difference from what I had before. So again, back up here, like you have your before, flat plastic car, into something that has, looks more integrated into that environment, okay? Another thing that I need going on here, guys, is there's the shadow. So it gives me that shadow based on that light. That's great. It's going to act just like it does in the real world. The surface is shiny. So what do I want to do there? I can jump in and give it a reflection. So I'm going to increase the opacity, but there's the reflection of the car. So I didn't have to duplicate that. Like if this was 2D, I'd have to duplicate that, flip it, like fill in the blank. I don't know what under the car looks like. I'm going to make it up. I don't know. But in general, I have that ability to adjust the opacity and even change the roughness. But I have that sort of control when it comes to 3D, right? Even back in here for this car right here, if I decide, let's just select this car. Or the client decides they want it driving away from you, because that would be like so much cooler, whatever, I'll turn that around. And again, since this is 3D, we can rotate it around any way we want, okay? And I can even use these controls if I want to as well. I have the numerical controls, but from there, if I just grab the Y coordinate, I can position it just like that, and now it's driving away, right? But that's what I'd want in general when it comes to 3D compositing. If you can get a hold of the model, that's great, right? drop it in there, and you have full control over all those various materials. I could even jump in there and paint on that if I want to, right? And so you'll have these, like game designers, you know, there's a guy who works on all the materials, then there's the 3D guy in the other room, and they're passing files back and forth. How does that texture look? Well, no, I can actually paint on models and give them the textures that's going to match up just fine, okay? But this is what I like. I have this sort of flexibility. If you're lucky enough to work for Audi, congratulations, that's awesome, right? But let's take a step back, right? Because you're like, Paul, you cheated. You have a 3D model already, and I don't have a 3D model or whatever. Even though I told you where to find one, right? Because remember, you can go to Get More Content, any file out there, you can just load in and start to play with.